Hello and welcome back to another Outdoor Ed School podcast, the podcast which is devoted to making outdoor ed easy for teachers like you. My name is Dan Pritchard and as always I'll be walking you through another outdoor ed resource, and today's episode is based on the Yerkes-Dodson Law. So what is this? Well, it's been mentioned a couple of times in previous episodes, in particular comfort, stretch, panic and challenge by choice. I referred back to the Yerkes-Dodson Law a couple of times in those two episodes. And it basically is about understanding pressure levels and performance levels and how one can impact the other. So in this law, in this theory, if you apply pressure, you change the level of performance. So if you have minimal to no pressure, then that person's performance will be quite low because there's no need for them to strive to achieve something, there's no goal for them to go for, there's no deadline that they need to meet. If you start to apply a certain amount of pressure, then the performance starts to go up. And the reason for this is because the person has something that they're aiming for. There is now a goal which is defined and that they have to make effort to try and to achieve. There is a deadline that they have to meet. There's something which they now have to work towards to be able to achieve. So setting that clear goal. However, there's also a way of applying too much pressure. So the same things which could motivate someone to get up and do something and start performing well and achieving something. If you apply too much pressure by giving them an impossible deadline, by giving them no space to think, by putting them in a situation which is all a bit overstimulating and a bit overwhelming, well, suddenly the performance can start to dip once again. So if you imagine a graph, imagine there is an x-axis which runs along the bottom, and this marks out from 1 to 10, and this marks the different levels of pressure, with 1 being no pressure whatsoever or very little pressure, internally, externally and environmentally, and number 10 would be there's a lot of pressure. You're in that realm of stress, in panic, feeling overwhelmed and anxiety. So that's the pressure scale, which is the x-axis going along. Imagine the up-axis, the y-axis, that marks out performance. Again, with 1 at the bottom, low performance, and 10 at the top, high performance. If you marked out the Yerkes-Dodson Law on this graph, it would shape out a bell with 1, 2 and 3, the first kind of 3 steps in the graph, being quite low performance. This is because there is no pressure, no drive for them to actually do anything. However, when it gets to 4, 5, 6 and 7, the 4 middle numbers, you see an increase of performance, and in the middle of 5 and 6, you get that kind of peak performance. So imagine 4 is the upward slope, 5 and 6 is the very top of the bell, the very peak performance, 7 is just on the way back down, and then again the last 3 numbers, 8, 9 and 10, well, they're in complete panic, full stress, loads of anxiety, so performance again is very low. So imagine that kind of curve, that up and then down, that bell shape on the graph is the level of performance when it meets pressure. But what different types of pressure are there? Well, in the Yerkes-Dodson Law, it talks about 3 different types of pressure. Pressure number 1 is internal pressure. Now this is your driving force. This is that internal voice saying, I want a new car, I want a house, I want to achieve this goal, develop this skill set. It's that internal fire burning which is going, I need the next thing, I want the next thing, let's carry on going, that driving factor. So that's pressure type number 1. Pressure type number 2 is external pressure. Now this can be from work, giving you deadlines, by giving you dangling promotions in front of you, giving you incentives, or giving you kind of factors that you need to meet to be able to do your job. And the final pressure type is environmental. Now this is something like Imagine you've gone kayaking, it was lovely and sunny, but then suddenly a storm's kind of rolled in. You've got the lumpy, bumpy waves, the wind's picked up, it's raining. Suddenly you've got that environmental pressure that's put you into a situation where you have to respond. This could be if you took your students to a climbing wall and maybe they're doing an abseil challenge, they've got to the top of the tower, they look over and it's the environmental pressure which has got a bit too much for them. They've started to feel scared, overwhelmed, feeling angry, upset, and they need to go. So they're the three different types of pressure which someone can experience during whatever they're doing, whether they're taking part in an activity, whether they're at work, whether they're at school, just kind of the pressure they can feel from everyday life. The idea of this model is trying to recognise that everyone's pressure levels are slightly different. Some people, they only take a little bit of pressure to be applied to them and they'll be in that peak state, that state where they're trying to perform very high. And some people, maybe that window is even smaller. Maybe that window is just about where 5 is rather than 5 and 6. So there's a smaller amount of pressure to play with when you're trying to get them to the peaks, because everyone is unique. Everyone deals with situations in a unique way, and they need to understand what's going around them. They need to have that support that's going around them, and you as the teacher, as the provider, you need to be able to kind of facilitate that, to be able to reduce stress and pressure when it's needed, to apply pressure so you're getting the most out of your students during activities and even during your classes. So the Yerkes-Dodson Law is a really helpful graph and a really key thing for you to keep in your head when you're taking your students to take part in these adventurous experiences, or whether it's in general day-to-day life when you can see someone's getting a bit too overwhelmed because maybe they're not working so well with their friend group or so forth and so on. So having a little look at that graph, maybe even explaining it to your group when you're going to these outdoor activity centres, when you're taking part in these team challenges, or whether you're doing it for your general lessons, it allows people to understand that actually the reason why you are applying pressure is because you're trying to get them to work in their peak performance. And by you not applying pressure is allowing them to become slipping down into this boredom section, into that 1, 2, 3 on the graph, and they're not getting the best results. They're not pushing themselves to the point where they can be really achieving something, really developing a skill set or a knowledge. Equally, you're there to try and balance it so that you're giving them the understanding that when you recognise that someone's in that 8, 9, 10 zone, in that overstressed panic zone, that you will then do anything you can to reduce the amount of pressure, to reduce that stress, so they fall back inside that peak performance as well. If you have any questions about this model, or you would like an activity which goes along with this, then all you've got to do is head over to our website, which is www.outdooredschool.co.uk. You'll be able to find the hub. If you click on that, it's a free online membership platform for teachers like yourselves. You'll be able to download loads of fun activities which only use everyday items and pair perfectly with the Yerkes-Dodson Law model. You'll also find other models which are very similar, some that are slightly different, but all of them look around trying to improve your students' experience, develop this growth mindset and get them to excel, taking part in problem-solving tasks in this problem-based learning kind of style, this alternative learning style. As always, if you need any support, you'll be able to find our email and our phone number on our website as well. But if you've enjoyed this podcast, if you're on Spotify, click through and hit the follow button, and then you'll know when we're posting a new episode, which we do 2 or 3 times a week. If you're watching this on YouTube, then all you're going to do is hit subscribe and ring the bell, so you'll get notified when the next video goes up and live. Until next time, take it easy, and I'll see you soon. Bye.